Hello, hello. This is Jessica Gerlach, certified personal trainer and author of the book You Don't Make Friends with Salad. And you're listening to the 5 Foot Strong podcast, the show that we will do a deep dive into our personal strengths, discover what makes you strong, and talk about our physical and mental health journeys. Whether you are 5 feet tall like myself or 5'11", we are all 5 foot strong in our own unique and beautiful ways. So please take a big deep breath in, get comfortable, and let's do this. Hello, hello, and welcome back to the 5 Foot Strong podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Gerlach, and on today's episode, we are talking about finding yourself again and learning about your inner strength after the loss of a loved one. Our guest today tragically lost her husband 3 years ago, but since then, she has embraced the strong woman she really is. Our guest, Carly Cooper, is a life coach, an author, host of the podcast So That Just Happened, a mom, and she recently launched her new online coaching program, Rekindle Your Life. So let's get into it all and let's welcome Carly Cooper to the 5 Foot Strong podcast. Hey, Carly, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody who comes on is, what does being strong mean to you?
Well, who I am today would give you a different answer than who I was 3 years ago. So I'll give you the who I am today answer.
Sounds good.
Being strong to me now means really being real and honest and feeling all of my feelings and asking for help when I need it and being vulnerable and really using my voice to tell people, especially the important people in my life, what I need when I need it. And I say that's a very different answer because I used to think some of those things showed weakness. And I actually think that being vulnerable and asking for help and being transparent and being truly authentic is strong to me. That means strength for me.
100%, and I agree completely. So let's go back 3 years ago when your husband passed away. And how did you approach even the journey to become where you are today?
I don't think it was a conscious effort. I think I've been a life coach, a mindset coach, for the past 16 years, but I've been in the personal growth industry and personal development and self help for 30 plus years. I've always been drawn to it. I've always been interested in it. And so I think a lot of that just naturally and intuitively kicked in. And that's why I feel like I came out the other side relatively quickly. I'm not saying it's been easy, and it wasn't, and it's still in process and it's still ongoing. But because I already had so many strategies and tools under my belt, what I taught for years, what I had to implement in other ways, I think it just all kicked in for me. And so it wasn't like a conscious, like, okay, I'm going to do this now, or I'm going to think this now, or I'm going to practice this now. I think it was just years of embodying this work and the work that it just allowed me to move through my grief and pain and all of it in what I will say a healthier way than had I not had that information or strategies or those tools already embedded in my brain.
100%. And I mentioned you were a mom and you had a young son at the time. How did you approach it and to be strong for him as a strong mom?
Well, my natural instinct was to want to protect him, but also give him what he needed. So, and again, it wasn't, I didn't get it 100% right all the time. It was sort of trial and error and reading the room and seeing where he was at. And, so my husband took his life. So if people are wondering, well, how did he die? He took his life. And so it was obviously a different kind of grief and trauma and a lot of, not saying it's easier or harder or whatever, but it was just different. And
Yeah.
my son, I wanted to protect him, but if he asked questions or wanted to know truths to things, he was 14 at the time, so I gave him the truth in a filtered way that I felt was appropriate, but also being honest, because I felt that if he was asking for it, that's what he needed. I also tried to protect him from my own feelings and grief, which I'm not sure was 100% the way to go.
Right.
However, it's what I did at the time. I think also just for me to wrap my head around my own grief and where I was at with that. And so I sort of cried in private and I broke down in private. And now it's just because it's also who I always have been. I've never been somebody who has leaned on other people in that way and cried in front of people in that way. So that was just very much how I just handled things throughout my life.
Yeah.
But then I learned that it's important for him to see that I'm not always 100% strong 100% of the time. I didn't want him to feel like he needed to take care of me or worry that I was unhinged. And so that's why I portrayed myself in that way. But I also wanted to allow him to feel his own feelings and see that it's okay to share that. So it was sort of like a fine line that I had to strike a balance and I had to figure out as I went. But that's sort of how I navigate it now, is that if I'm having a bad day or I'm feeling a certain way, I'll be transparent with him. I'll let him know that. And I certainly have always let him know that it's okay to feel whatever he's feeling, even if it's good when it should be sad, or even if it's sad when it should feel, like anything goes.
100%. Yeah. No, you know what? The fact that you have to stay strong for yourself is one thing, but the fact that you had to stay strong for your son is a whole different thing. And, nothing is right or wrong. It's the way you've had to handle it, and you've come out on top of that, and when life throws you a curveball, you just got to kind of figure out how to deal with it. How do you prioritize your mental and physical? Like, do you work out?
Yes, I do. I work out every day. I try to eat relatively well. Look, I'm 50 years old now, so things are changing and hormones are happening and all of that. And so what I just actually hired a fitness and nutrition coach, because what I was doing, even though I thought it was all right, and I put that in quotes, um, wasn't working for me, because bodies change and things that you were doing when you were 20 or 30 or 40 don't necessarily work anymore when you're 50.
Yeah, 100%.
So, I always prioritize my physical health, my mental health, by always checking in and always being willing to invest in myself. And so if that means that I can't figure it out on my own, then I'm going to work with somebody or hire somebody who knows more than me in that area. And that's, a lot of people know a lot more than I do in many areas. So, I went through the first half of my life trying to figure it all out on my own and do it all on my own. And I'm at that point now where I realize that I don't want to. It's not my zone of genius to know all the things. And so I've really prioritized my mental health, my physical health, all of it, by surrounding myself with experts in what I need help with and being willing to invest in myself in order to move the needle forward. And I find that that's like been one of the biggest lessons for me, because I've always been a fiercely independent type A kind of person who just, I'll figure it out. and
Yeah.
I'm resourceful and I'm capable and all the things. But I've realized that, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. It's kind of
No, it makes
lonely.
sense. 100%. But even the fact that asking for help is a sign of strength,
Hmm.
even if it comes down to, helping in your fitness program, but also helping in your grieving process, like, it all comes down to if you're willing to ask for help, that to me is strength right there.
Yeah, and I come back to investing in yourself,
Yeah,
like it's we can all do a Google search and find the answers to things. But when you have a coach or a therapist or an energy healer or a nutritionist or whatever you need in your corner, cheering you on, answering your questions, giving you that accountability, even if you can do it on your own, you're not going to push yourself in the ways that you would if someone was watching you or
100%.
someone was like, guiding you. And so I find that, yeah, I was working out every single day, but I wasn't building muscle. And so in a sense, it's kind of like, okay, I probably could be lifting 15s, but I'm going to lift 10 cuz whatever,
Yeah.
but now I'm pushing myself to do more, which is going to give me the results that I'm actually looking for, and I'm not spinning my wheels anymore.
100%. I see people that do the same workout program for 20 years and they see no physical change.
Right.
And it's like, well, why don't you ask for help? And they think they know everything. So,
Right.
asking for help is a sign of strength. That's it all goes back to, again, as you said, investing into yourself because this is even when you're dealt with something so tragic as, losing your husband, it's you kind of, to me it sounds like you had a base that you were able to kind of focus back on investing in yourself, and that has built your strength up over time. Am I correct?
Yeah. And it's, what's interesting too is that because I've been immersed in personal growth and development for 30 plus years, there are many things that I felt like, okay, well, what's this coach going to tell me that I don't already know? Or what's this therapist going to tell me that I don't already know? And yet, even though you know it, or even though you've practiced something for years, we all have blind spots, right, to our own stuff.
For sure.
And something you can understand as a concept, but unless you actually implement it, or unless you actually tailor it to your specific thing, or who you were 10 years ago is not who you are today. It doesn't mean you have had to have gone through a trauma or grief, but hopefully you've evolved in the last 10 years.
For
And
sure.
so, it's constantly checking in and being challenged in a supportive way of like, okay, yeah, you might see it that way, but that's your blind spot, or that's your fear, or that's the self-sabotage getting in the way. And even though again, I know all the things, being lovingly called out on my stuff is growth, and that's
100%.
progress. And you need somebody else who's objective, who's not going through the emotion and the grief with you, who, because sometimes we lean on friends and family, and while they're very well intentioned most of the time, they still are going through their own grief and trauma or emotion around whatever it is, or they know you so well that they're too attached. And so to have a third party objective person to just who is not attached to the situation, who didn't know who you were in high school, it's really helpful. And it's a way for you to even just trust that, because there's no ulterior motive, or there's no projection, right, of their stuff onto you of how you should feel or how you should handle something. So I am a huge advocate of, I don't care if this is your field. When it comes to you and your stuff, it's always a smart idea to seek outside support away from friends and family.
So you said, like, when did you look for outside support when you lost Mark?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I did EMDR therapy right away. That is not my zone of genius, but
Yeah.
so I definitely, did that because I needed to diffuse the fear and the trauma of the situation. I have a therapist. I got a spiritual coach. I have a business coach. I have, like I said, a fitness and nutritionist. I have a village
Yeah.
of people like literally keeping me upright. But again, I look at that as it is helping me to become a stronger, more empowered version of myself. I've never looked at it as like, oh my God, I am so screwed up. Look at all the people I need to help me get out of bed. It's not that at all. It's like, I want to just continue to thrive and grow and do greater things. And so it's like, I look at it as I am surrounding myself with a team of people who can help me get there, not because I'm broken, but
Right.
because I'm
You want to
human.
develop, you want to grow.
I'm human and I
Yeah.
want to keep getting better and better. And I want to just surround myself with smart people who can help me do that.
Well, you know what? I think that's amazing that you are willing to accept the help from other people around you. And, just by talking to you, I always see that talking about mindset, because I do talk about mindset a lot in my work, is mindset is everything. And you could have that growth mindset where you're willing to evolve, or you have that fixed mindset where you play that victim and life is just misery, right?
Yeah.
So, to me it sounds like the growth, you had that growth mindset to start with.
Yeah. I always have. And I think I did years and years. Well, I shouldn't say I always have, but I recognized it early enough that it has always been on my radar to work on my mindset and to continue to look, I have bad days. There are plenty of days where I'm just like, I wish I wasn't such a self-aware, evolved life coach. Some days I just want to play the victim and I just want to feel all the bad feelings, even though I know better. And there are moments that I allow that for myself because I think you have to have real feelings. You can't just like positive affirmation your way out of things and expect that, life will be rainbows and unicorns as much as we want it. You have to have the bad feelings, the negative feelings, the pain. You have to go through it in order to get through it. And the only way is to actually feel things. But I always say you don't want to build a house there, right? So you can have bad days and you can have bad moments and you can have, I took an entire year off after Mark died and I didn't work. And I really just took that time to just like feel and do the things and the work and just sort of do what I needed to do. But because I allowed that for myself, and that was hard for me because I was in the camp of like positive thoughts and positive affirmations. And, until I learned that that's not healthy and that's not normal and that's not realistic. And so, the sooner that you can feel all of the feelings, even the negative ones, especially the negative ones, the sooner you're going to get to the other side. It's not fun, it's not easy, it's not pretty, but it's necessary because otherwise what you're doing is like you're just putting a band-aid over all of the hard stuff, but the band-aid's eventually going to dry up and fall off
Yeah.
and then it's going to be another open wound. So let's just get her done.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm not saying
agree.
it's like, and I'm not saying like you're ever done. Like, I just had the 3-year anniversary and like it's been a really rough couple of days, even though I'm I'm doing so much better. Like there's always going to be that song that triggers you or that memory that whatever, like,
But that's a
upsets you.
100%. And there's always going to be bad days. Life is never, as you said, life is not always rainbows and butterflies.
Right.
So it is okay to embrace feeling, because if we don't have feeling, then it's not a good thing at all. Um,
Exactly.
but the way you get out of it, it's the way you deal with the curveballs that life throws at you.
Yeah, and I say like something that may have taken me down and for like a month now might take me down for a day or an
Right.
hour.
Right.
So it can still take you down, but you build a resilience muscle. And that's really what I tell my clients to expect. Not that you're never going to have a bad thought, never that you're never going to have a bad day again, but when something hits you, when you get thrown off, when you are having a bad moment, it's a moment. It's not, and that's okay. Like it's about building up the resilience
Yeah.
and your bounce back time.
And resilience is strength.
100%.
Yeah. Do you have any like a healthy tip for listeners who might have experienced a similar situation as you?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of what we were already talking about, that the only way through trauma or grief is through. So it's you can't avoid it or pretend it or deny the feelings and not to numb yourself out. And there's 1,000 different ways that we numb ourselves out. And, whether it's alcohol, drugs, shopping, eating, watching TV, for me, it was distraction. It's like throwing myself into work or just being really busy. Or, that was a way that I would try and numb out. But the only way to really move through is to feel it. And I also say, don't do it alone, right? Like if you don't have anybody in your life, like family or friends who you think, and you really want to be protective of who you share certain things with, because even though, like I said, certain family members or friends might be well intentioned, they can really only meet you where they've done their own work, right? So, they might not be capable of hearing it. It might make them very uncomfortable. So they might not give you the kind of support that you need. And so some friends can and some friends can't. And that's no fault of their own. It's just their own level of their own stuff. And so I always say, if you can't, it's important to find someone that you can trust with allowing you to feel without judgment, without censorship, to really just feel it all. And yes, we all numb from like every now and then, right? No
Yeah.
judgment, but
Yeah.
but it's not the way to truly get through something. There's no way around it. You have to go through it.
Well, I think that will be very helpful for listeners who have experienced a similar situation as you. And I think it's a great way to finish off this episode. Carly, thank you so much again for sharing your journey of strength after loss. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate you coming on to the 5 Foot Strong podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we end this?
Just, if they're looking for support, I just launched a program called Rekindle Your Life, and it's all about how to find yourself after losing your person, whether that's through death or divorce, or you're just feeling lost. Reach out. You can go to my website, thecarlycooper.com. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram. Direct message me there. Or if I'm not your person, that's totally fine too. Just find somebody who can support you through because we all need people to help us be our best.
Well, thank you, Carly, again. And I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to finish off this episode by thanking Carly Cooper for sharing her journey of finding her personal strength after the loss of a loved one. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Remember, whether you're 5 feet tall like myself or 5'11", we are all 5 foot strong. See you next week for our season finale.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.